Today I'm discussing another local comrade of mine, this time Chinese illustrator and comic artist by the name of Caitlin Du. And we're also going to talk about her series by the name of Fly Child. Let me just start off by mentioning that, like last time, we have a title that has a double meaning. Honestly, when I picked up this comic, that's the first thing that stood out to me. Even though with English seemingly developing at the speed of thought almost, I'm not sure how commonly the word fly is used in a slang sense to convey something that is aesthetic or beautiful or classy or whatever. But if you just look at the cover design, I think that's already goes a long way with earning it the adjective of fly. Even though once we get to know the character a little bit more, perhaps through the course of this review, it might become a decent argument that she doesn't really deserve to be called fly in that sense, though. What I mostly mean by that is that the cover depicts this heroic-looking character with a cape and a little bit of a disguise on them, like superheroes often do, which already sets a basic tone to what the story is gonna be about, which is most likely gonna be superheroes. But what's making this intriguing is that there is this stark contrast between light and shadow coming from the bottom right corner, which to me suggests that somebody may have tried to cast a spotlight on this character, but they, instead of just accepting the glory and enjoying it for a hot minute, they're just like, nah man, I'm good. I have more important things to contemplate in this life. And also I could tell that Caitlin probably spent some time diligently constructing the color palette, because the vast amount of green is complementing the orangish red type of hue that at least I'm seeing in the logo, as well as their glasses right here. And as somebody who typically goes for black and white when making illustrations, I always admire the hell out of anybody who manages to put together a nice color scheme in a way that conveys emotion and points the visual hierarchy in a really soothing and effective and functioning way. So, the story in Fly Child is about a child whose superpowers are reminiscent to a fly, and her name is Alex, and another key character is her mother by the name of Lanternfly, who recently decided to move to another city where apparently she's needed more than she is needed in Moth York, which is the main setting of the story, or at least one of the main ones. However, Alex isn't really taking that move of her mom very well, because she quickly gets burdened by a sense of abandonment. She decides to start taking out that frustration related to that by turning into, I promise this is the last time I'm using this pun, a fly child, and single-handedly raising the crime rate in Moth York, and essentially becoming an anti-hero with the goal of gathering her mother's attention. I like how the artist from the very get-go doesn't waste any time setting up the plot, and from the very first page we're told that breaking news about lanternflies move, and it's apparently such a huge news that it's broadcasted all throughout town, almost like a Times Square type of place. It's like those TVs and speakers in this place are metaphor for Alex's deeply pent-up thoughts that she's getting more and more frustrated about, especially at the end of page 2, where presumably the mom character in TV interview says, quote unquote, "There is nothing for me here." Bro, there's absolutely nothing for you in Moth York, not even your, I don't know, child? And I would argue that in general, setup like this where we as readers quickly get to know the plot, the setting, and at least the main character is very important, because then later on in the story it'll make more sense why the main character, are often characters in plural, behave the way they're behaving, such as Alex here, who like after devouring a sandwich is just like, yeah mom, you will regret this, and this city will never be safe. And what do we mean by that? Well, we find out immediately after the end of that scene when we transition to another scene in Boyglin thrift store in Moth York, where once again I have to give praise to Caitlin Dew for the choice of her color palette in this one, because immediately we're thrown into a setting that suggests a slightly more light-hearted mood as opposed to the dark sort of emo trip that we were on related to the main character in the opening scene. But interestingly, Caitlin pretty quickly sort of throws this seemingly lightheartedness on its head by once again bringing up a sort of trigger related to Alex's mental struggle, and that ultimately plays out in wham, combined with what seems like broken glass. And personally, I find this double page spread the most brilliant piece of art in the entire zine, because at this point we know that, okay, Alex is having these mental struggles. She's living in a city that probably has plenty of improvement with its system, because they're they're letting plenty of villains run wild, or they're really trying to detain them, but they don't have enough resources for them. So, that being said, like, the artist's choice to depict this broken wall as some glass that's about to shatter instead was a great choice, because in my perspective that suggests not only a really fragile system depicted in this story's universe, but also the ultimate breaking point of Alex, which is probably why it doesn't take long for a hero to get sent over, and the hero is, interestingly, none other than what is in the beginning of the issue thought to be this sweet old auntie type of character for Alex, who's actually now turning out to be her enemy, which I find pretty damn brilliant social commentary, honestly, because I'm imagining that I can speak for a lot of us, especially those who have been around for multiple decades, when I say that sometimes a person who starts off as your friend might actually turn out to have bad intentions and become your enemy, who you might have to, at least on a psychological level, or God forbid, maybe even a physical level, fight really passionately later. Or it can also be the opposite, that sometimes somebody who starts off as your enemy might become a friend. But anyway, here we once again see Alex taking out her frustrations on somebody who may or may not have anything to do with Lanternfly's decision to move out of Moth York. At this point, we don't know that yet. We just know that Alex probably needs to figure out some constructive ways to channel her frustration, unless this can actually be that constructive output, like basically getting into a bunch of mischief as this anti-hero type of character. We're not entirely sure yet at this point of the story. And at least to me, it seems like Alex herself agrees with that, because at the very end of the issue, she says this really deep, thought-provoking line that, well, while my mother is saving all these random places outside of Moth York, I am basically broken. So she goes on to say that, quote unquote, who's gonna save me? Who's gonna save me? I mentioned some social commentary a moment ago. That particular line is really thought-provoking in the sense that if we think about the real world also, with all its complex sociological issues, we are not sure what an individual's fundamental motive is for committing crimes, okay? And I'm not saying that crime is right, but I would still make the argument that it is very much worthwhile considering, at the latest, once we put the individual in trial, like, what was the fundamental motive? Because, like, being good or bad is not really so black and white. right? As one has to take in consideration a lot of circumstances, like the environment, the time, the culture, and in the case of the main character of Fly Child, what the individual's mental state is and how that could have played into their decision to do what they're doing. The only thing about the comic that I would have done differently had I been Caitlin Do was maybe slowing down the pacing ever so slightly. Personally, I enjoy me some comics where the artist really takes their time setting the scene, mostly by showing the environment a little bit more, and also letting us get to know the character and maybe another individual or two from their close social circle. Because while I like the idea of the old lady, Mrs. Patterson, if I'm recalling correctly, making the stew for Alex and basically communicating to the reader that, yeah, they're probably either friends or some sort of close neighbors or something like that. I would have still pushed that particular dialogue scene with the stew just a little bit more to kind of make it more so clear what their relationship actually is. But other than that, all in all, I found it a good and worthwhile read. I would especially recommend Fly Child for anybody who's into My Hero Academia, because it definitely gives off those kind of vibes with the superhero stuff going on, especially when those type of individuals seem to be in more of a prominent position for law enforcement than. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking out issue 2 of the comic. But in the meantime, as usually, you have my very warm thanks for making it through this video and showing your support that way. And as usually, if you've been enjoying these, please do not shy away from hitting all of those necessary things related to the engagement that'll please the algorithm gods and maybe spread this voice of mine a little bit more widely. Take care, and I will speak to you more in the next one.